Welcome to 5-Star Company Culture with your host, Josh Cunningham. In this podcast, we explore how culture is the key to unlocking massive profits and unprecedented freedom. Discover insights, strategies, and inspiring stories to transform your life and business. Here's your host, Josh Cunningham.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the 5-Star Company Culture Podcast. I'm super excited to be with you today. My name is Josh Cunningham. I'm, of course, the host of the show, the founder and CEO of 5-Star Company Culture. We help businesses, we help business leaders, entrepreneurs, C-level executives unleash more profits and freedom in their life by implementing a rock-solid foundation of a company culture that attracts and retains top quality talent, that delivers exceptional client experiences, and creates more freedom in your life as a leader, right? The goal of life isn't just be grinding out 80, 100 hours a week, chasing, one fire to put out after another, but to actually have some freedom in our life to enjoy the things that we want to enjoy while we're here on Earth. Today, I am joined by Ashton Rodenhiser, our northern neighbor up in Canada, in Nova Scotia. How's it going today, Ashton?
I'm doing so well, Josh. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this topic.
Certainly. And I'm exceptionally excited to hear about some of your experiences as well. You've been in business for over 7 years. You've been helping people visualize ideas for over 10 years. And you've got an incredible skill, an incredible talent, and a very unique way of helping people really illustrate and communicate and elevate their messages. So why don't you give our audience here a little background story into some of your professional expertise?
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh. It's company culture is something that I'm really passionate about. So I'm really excited to talk about this today. And so as a graphic recorder or live illustrator, companies and organizations and conferences hire me to come in and help visualize the information that flows out of a meeting or the conversation that comes. And at the end of the day, when I'm doing like facilitated type sessions, it's about creating a safe space for people to feel valued and heard, and to break down complexity and gain clarity and understanding, and building that bridge between the two. And so even though what I create when I'm live illustrating, like literally drawing very large on a piece of paper or doing it digitally through a Zoom call, it's very visually nice, like it should be at this point of doing it for 10 years. But at its core, I love working with people who care about the people that are in that room, or the participants in a conference or what have you, to help deepen that level of understanding. So those are my favorite types of people. Those are really the only type of people I work with these days, that they understand the value that visualizing information can do, and how it can be an accessibility tool to help people engage in the moment and after, because we ask so much from people. Hey, come to this conference and sit here and listen for 8 hours. Like we just don't have the attention span to do that properly.
Yeah.
And if I can create visual representations of the information, then it can help you engage with it in the moment, but also remember it long term. And that's like one of my favorite values of it, or benefits, is like the memory retention of it. And when I'm doing it in sessions with people where they're facilitated, and I know we're going to get into that a little bit more, it's really about making sure that people have a safe space, and creating a safe space for people to be able to share what's going on with them. And creating safe spaces is actually like quite a skill set in itself, let alone the whole illustrating of everything. And that's kind of how I got into this work in the first place, was as a facilitator first, which allowed me to really deepen my listening and my thinking and my synthesizing skills, and being able to hear what people say in feedback and words. And then I learned about this 10 years ago, where I can actually feedback in images, and how powerful that can be.
That's an incredible intro there. A couple of things that kind of struck me at the heart was talking about feeling valued and feeling heard. And, the business I've been running for the last 10 years, it's a real estate call center. We take the work that nobody else wants to do, which is call leads, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't wake up as a 8-year-old every day thinking one day I want to grow up and call internet leads for real estate professionals. But the
Yeah,
point
yeah,
is, we took the work that nobody else wanted to do. We hired a generation of talent that doesn't stereotypically have a great reputation for being hard workers, right? We're talking about millennials and Gen Z here. But the reason why our company has thrived and succeeded over the last decade is because we understand that foundation of valuing people's service and listening to their insights and their opinions, that they're valued and
yeah.
that they're heard. And we do that lots of different ways. But I was speaking with a coaching client of mine recently, and he was having some frustration with it's very, very prestigious business, right? Very high level intellect and expertise that's required to deliver the stuff that deliver at the top. But of course, every business has people all within the organization that might do some very small menial task. And he was having an issue with an employee at the entry level of not feeling valued and not feeling heard.
Mhm.
And the way he's explaining it to me is like, I mean, I just don't get it. Why can't they just show up and do their job? I pay them a paycheck, I mean, what do I literally need to go and like tell them they're doing a great job at this stupid, dumb little menial task? And I
Right.
was like, time out right there. Why don't you just repeat back to me what you said? Now, if they were sitting in the room with us, do you think they would feel valued and feel heard? It doesn't matter what the task is. If
Yeah.
that's the way that you explain it, then you're right. You actually
Mhm.
don't value the work that they do, and that's probably the issue
Yeah.
that you're having there. So, from an organizational standpoint, we got to make sure all of our teammates, right, everybody on the team here, no matter whether they're cleaning the toilets or whether they're delivering the most high income producing activity, that they all have an opinion, they all have experiences, they all have insights that matter and are going to contribute to the team. So I love that you talk about that, and that's basically what your business does, help solve that problem. You also talked about the attention span that people have that's so shortened even today, right?
Mhm.
And you go to these big conferences, you sit in a room for 8 hours at a time. It's not just about writing down the notes, but actually remembering what it is that you learned. That's the really important piece there, I think, that you help people solve. So why don't we
Mhm.
dive into some of the experience shares here? What are some of the case studies or the clients that you've been able to work with to come in as that third party, create that safe space for them,
Mhm.
and allow them to share what they may not want to be able to share, but in a positive and a constructive way.
Yeah, so I certainly have had a few opportunities throughout the years to actually dive in, and they hired me specifically with a co-facilitator to go in and try to understand the
Mm,
company culture. And unfortunately, because it's not good, there's
mm,
issues, there's stuff going on, but sometimes it's really difficult to find out what's actually wrong in like the employee's own words,
mm.
because you can't fix it if you don't know it's broken, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
it's so as a third party, I actually really love going into a situation where I don't know anything. Like I
Mm.
have no baggage. Like I don't know what Kathy from HR did yesterday. Like nothing. Like I have no clue. So you
She
go
didn't
in with
steal your parking spot in the parking lot, huh? Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So I love being this sort of fly on the wall kind of in there, but then also being able to create a space where people know this isn't just a regular meeting. And I think when I can show up with my paper and markers and start drawing things out, that in itself signifies this isn't our normal meeting, right?
Hmm.
And one time I was invited in, and it was a manufacturing plan and had different shifts. So I actually even had to go in at like midnight, and like we kind of like interviewed folks in groups, and we only asked them one question. And the question was, how does this company show you that they care?
Mm.
And one by one, like we had to do this. It could have been done better, but this was what we had with the time that we had.
Hmm.
One by one, each person went around the room. And before that, we set the guidelines of how we're going to share. This isn't a space just to vent, like, "Ooh, this is a constructive space," but we also want to hear your grievances, but in like a constructive way, right? Like, what
Hmm.
can we actually do?
Hmm.
And or so one by one, each person would go around the room, give people a few minutes to kind of speak. And as they're doing that, I'm drawing that out. And so over the course of these sessions with the different shift work, I think I created like 4 or 5 of these large graphics. And then was able to sit down with the leadership and the new plant manager and say, this is how people feel, like you show, like how you show that you care about them. And there were definitely like main themes that came across in different, even though they worked in different shifts, there were some things that came up as sort of like the top things. But then I loved it when the plant manager saw some things that were like low hanging fruit at the same time. Like, oh, well, that's easy fix. Like, that's not hard to fix, right? So there's these little things that they could do to start to show the folks that work with them that they do care, and then start to try to tackle some of those bigger items. And also they told me when I asked them a few months later about how they worked with it and the graphics and sort of our report back, it also allowed the graphics to work as an accountability tool. And actually they drew on them themselves, like, and put dates on them, and it even crossed things out and said, we can't do this and this is why. Because I find oftentimes people will say, well, I want this to happen, or I want this change. And leadership goes, sure, we'll do that. But then something happens that is just not feasible for whatever reason. And now there's a conduit, whereas the employee will say, this is what needs to change. And leadership says yes. And then it doesn't happen. And the employee's left feeling what? Not great. But it allows this like soft space in between to show, we heard you and we're telling you we can't do this thing, unfortunately, and this is why. So it allows for this like also this communication tool that can be this bit of a back and forth. And one of the most memorable moments of my career was in one of this session in particular. And I had a gentleman, and he was like well beyond retirement age. And he came up to me at the end. A couple people came up to me, but he came up to me because we gave people an opportunity that there was something that they didn't want to share out loud, that they kind of come and talk to me or my co-facilitator. We would make sure that was reflected. And he came up to me and he said, I've worked here for 40 years and no one has ever asked me if I asked my opinion before. Right. And so in that space, I'm like, whoa, I have this as this illustrator in the room. Like, it is, my role is more important than just creating a pretty picture here, people. Like, I think sometimes there's like the cool factor, like, let's get the artist to draw stuff. But like, I know that they're getting something so much more meaningful and deep in connection just by thinking about what an honor it is to be that space for someone who has never had that opportunity in the 40 years that they've worked there. You know what I mean? So it is quite a, and if it's this or something else, like, what can you do to show that you can, like, that you can create that safe space, whether it's something internal or like, obviously I'm biased, like if it's me or somebody else, but having a third party, because you're going to share stuff with a third party you're not going to share with your supervisor or the leadership, because you're like, I might get fired if I say this. If you share it with a third party and the third party goes, here you go, this is how they feel, and there's no name associated, we were very, very careful to make sure that they didn't even know which graphic came from which place. And then I created a graphic of everybody's information, so it was like all intertwined. You couldn't really like trace it back to anybody in particular. And so whatever it is that you can do to try to, especially if your culture isn't so great, or you're walking in, like this one in particular, there was a new manager and he knew things weren't great, but like, how do you fix it and how do you know what's wrong? So you can come back from that. You can start to try to do some different things, like this example of how I do it, in a way that you can, in a creative way that you can show people that you can hear them and that you are listening to change it. Because what's the worst thing that's going to happen at the end of the day? Like, people are still going to be unhappy. Right. So why don't you take the small baby steps and the small wins that you can to try to show people that you aren't just listening, randomly, but you're listening and you're taking action at the same time. So There was a whole bunch for you.
Yeah.
Think about,
Listen,
yeah.
I think the key there is listening to understand, right? And this
Yeah,
is one of the
definitely.
things that we actually teach in our business because we have sales reps that there's a certain script that they follow. But ultimately, the way we help people solve problems is by listening to understand, right? Figuring out what their true
Absolutely.
needs and motivation is, and being able to connect that with a resource or a solution. And so when we bring a new employee into our organization and they're learning those scripts, we're like, okay, here's some questions that we're asking, but don't just fire off the question and then in your head be thinking, what's the next question that I need to ask? Right?
Hmm.
When you ask the question, you need to pause and create a safe, open space to receive everything that they have to as an answer, because odds are, if you're truly listening to understand, they may actually answer a couple of your other questions. So the last thing you want to do is then turn around and ask a question that they've already answered. So listening to understand, not just checking the box, right? Not just throwing out the question, getting the survey, getting the results, throwing it into a report like you were talking about, right? We all love reports, here's the spreadsheets and the data and the numbers and the average that tells us yada yada, but being able to actually listen to understand and create that communication tool so that you show them that you care. What a simple question. How does this company show you that they care? And what an incredible story about the guy who'd been there for 40 years. I
Yeah.
think that we're at a time now where we're becoming more aware of the impact that our words have on our lives and on other people's lives, and
Yeah.
for the positive and the negative. I know of people in my own families that just within the last couple of generations, felt like they were never told by their parents that they were proud of them, or that they were
Yeah.
proud of their accomplishments, or
Yeah.
that the things that they did had meaning in it. And so
Yeah.
we now live in a more open society where we're starting to understand the importance of communication and being able to flow those ideas and tell someone, hey man, you've been here for 40 years. What do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Or how does this impact your life? Or how does this make you feel? Right? Because the way a
Mhm.
person feels is going to drive the actions that they take, and the actions that they take are going to create the results that your business gets to work with. So
Yeah. Can I
what
can
an
I tell a
incredible story there.
personal can I
Yeah,
tell a personal anecdote about the power of
certainly.
communication? Because I feel like, yes, I'm a live illustrator, but I'm also basically a professional listener and a professional communicator at this
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about this morning, my daughter forgot her lunchbox, and I'm like, oh no, I've got back-to-back calls.
Hmm.
One of them canceled, and I was like, okay, I can run it out. That actually worked out that this meeting canceled. And so I ran it out. And as I was driving to her school, which is about 15 minutes away, I was thinking in my head, you forgot your lunchbox. And when she comes home off the bus, what am I going to say to her? Am I going to say, you forgot your lunchbox today? Or I'm going to say, your lunchbox didn't get packed today.
Hmm.
Right. And I know for her, because I know her,
Hmm.
saying you forgot your lunchbox is very blaming, it's very shaming,
Hmm.
right? Whereas she's going to understand the message if I just say, oh, your lunchbox wasn't packed. Oopsie.
Hmm.
Like at the
Hmm.
end of the world, this wasn't a big deal. I'm sure if I couldn't have driven it to her, they would have figured something out. Like it's
Hmm.
not the end of the world. So, words matter and how we say things matter. And, it's something definitely to think about because it plays in. If you feel like, if you forgot to do something, you didn't do something, like things can be said in a way where they get the point
Hmm.
without this like blaming and shaming
Yeah.
kind of vibe to it as well. So I know that's a little off the topic,
Yeah.
but just made me think about it a lot when I was driving to her and to the school, and because I know she's going to feel really bad
Hmm.
about it
Hmm. Yeah.
already. So me saying to her when she gets off the bus here in a little bit, you forgot your lunchbox, is not going to be helpful. It's not
Right.
going to, I know she's already going to feel bad enough about it.
Yep.
She's very sensitive. She got that,
Yeah.
honestly. She got that from me. So
Yeah. Well, as I always love to say, it's only as big of a deal as you make it, and like you're right,
exactly.
with just a slight change in the language and the words that you're using, you might accidentally make something a big deal that really doesn't have to be a big deal.
Absolutely.
And the opposite of that is true as well. Like if something is a big deal, if you're a business leader and there's metrics that aren't being hit or standards that need to be raised, and it is just an oopsie thing, then guess what? The standard is what you're willing to tolerate. And so if there's something that needs to be a big deal and you're not making a big deal, maybe you might need to change your language and change your communication tools to make it a big deal, so you can hopefully inspire that improvement or that attention to detail or that raising of the standards that you need. So,
Yeah.
well, we had talked before we hit record here. I know a lot of our listeners are on Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon, but we do have some viewers on YouTube and on social media. And I asked, is there any way that you could share some examples of exactly what you are articulating here, of illustrating and elevating a message through basically, like you said, doodling people's conversations? So share away there and talk us through this.
Absolutely. So I'll just sort of, I'll talk as I'm kind of flipping through them, but as you can kind of see, all of these examples were created live in real time,
Wow.
most of them within a half an hour to an hour. So this one here, for example, it was a half an hour. So these are mostly presentations. So unfortunately, I can't share some like of the ones I talked about earlier in my example because of,
Yeah,
privacy.
sure. Yeah,
But
confidentiality matters.
confidentiality matters. It
Yeah,
matters. So, you can see here there's lots of information, but it's highlighted in a visual way and it's all 100% hand drawn live. So
yeah,
as I'm listening, I am reflecting back. I'm listening and I'm thinking and I'm making sense of what I'm hearing. And then I'm drawing a visual representation of what is being said. And even though it's like, nice to look at, it still, brings the message home about that topic or that
yeah,
information that's being presented. So, my goal is to help when they see it done live, they're hearing what's being said and they can see it for themselves and go, oh yeah, like that's what she just said, or that's what I just said, or what have you.
yeah,
And so there's like this beautiful learning tool for in the moment of how our brains think to help solidify that
yeah,
and the feeling seen and heard. But then also this piece now that you have at the end to be able to reflect on, print off, and hang in your cubicle, or print it off, or
yeah,
hang it in the lunchroom. Sometimes I'll create these, and it's like the vision for the company, for example, and then they have it in their room, and everybody contributed to that vision for that company, so they see their own words reflected, and it's hung up for everybody to reflect on. So
that's great.
you can
Yeah, and
kind of
if you're
see
not,
it all.
yeah, if you can't see these live on YouTube, yeah, I would encourage you to go check out the podcast on YouTube. Very inviting, very simple. And like I was going to ask, I would imagine people probably blow these up and put them on walls and put them in break
Yeah,
rooms and put them in cubicles and stuff,
absolutely.
because it's a very great way to simplify the concepts. There's, little anecdotal quotes and comments, and then there's headlines and titles and lots of flow of graphics to show the ideas coming to life. So, and this is how your brain works.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
most people think of pictures, right?
yeah,
And the example that I always give is YouTube, right? You were just talking about your YouTube channel.
yeah,
YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world for a reason,
yeah,
right? We want to see with our own eyes something explained to us.
yeah,
And, when I creating these, it's not about capturing every single word that is being said, but it's listening for those main themes and those
hmm,
ideas and like making it fun and playful. Like this one has like Lego,
yeah,
mini figure heads and and stuff like that. So, playing in like I like adding up, as you can see, like adding a lot of fun and playfulness and humor into the work that I do too, because if you add that emotional element and make it fun, it just helps strengthen that learning even deeper.
yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah, I love it. Fun in the workplace. That's one of our core values here at Rockerbox. We have fun while being the best. Because
exactly.
you've got to
Yeah.
have a pride and conviction for the service that you offer and the problem that you solve, and have some fun while you're doing it. And that's sort of one of those self-feeding reciprocal values that, if you're having fun, you're hopefully probably doing your best, and if you're doing your best, you're probably having fun while you're doing it. So this is a really
Absolutely.
great way of capturing that. Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much for sharing these images and all of your
Oh,
experience and insights into, really visualizing these ideas and helping them come to life. So if someone wants to learn a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you or possibly have you help them out with doing exactly this, what direction would you point them in?
Yeah, so my live illustration and graphic facilitation services can be found at mindseyecreative.ca, because I'm in Canada.ca, but majority of my clients are actually in the US. I work all over the world, which is a beautiful thing. And if you are like, this sounds really interesting, maybe I want to learn how to do that. It's actually not that hard to learn. And I wrote a book called The Beginner's Guide to Sketchnoting. Sketchnoting is a very common term for personal visual note taking. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're like, I'm kind of creative, even if you don't know how to draw, I wrote the book
Mm-hmm.
for people, even if they don't know how to draw,
Nice.
gives you the foundational elements and you can learn it very, very quickly. And get over that learning curve pretty fast. So, and I have a free weekly newsletter and a community and all the good stuff. So if you're interested in this skill set for yourself, you can go and hop over to Amazon and get the book, or just hop over to sketchnote.school and all information about learning how to sketchnote is on there.
Very cool. That's
Yeah.
quite a unique skill. And like you said, most skills are learnable, So got to have the right advice and the right proximity to the right experts, and you can achieve whatever it is that you want to. So, well, Ashton, it's been a pleasure getting to chat with you today. I'm sure our guests probably got a lot of great nuggets out of our conversation. I know I did. And for our guests, have no fear. We'll have some more phenomenal guests for you in the future to talk more about, five-star company culture and how it relates to, having your ideas come to life, creating more freedom and profits, creating more meaning and purpose in the work that you do and the problem that you solve. And so thanks again for joining us, Ashton.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to 5-Star Company Culture with Josh Cunningham. Embrace these lessons to elevate your business and join the ranks of thriving organizations. Stay tuned for more episodes. And until next time, remember, culture is the key to your success.